The first time Amia Jefferson saw a pirouette, she was 6 years old, standing in a faded hallway of St. Cecilia Hospital while waiting for her mother to finish the night shift. Someone had left the television on in the waiting room, a ballet. Recital flickered across the screen, soft music, delicate movement, and a girl who looked like she was floating. Amia didn't know the word for it, but she knew what it made her feel. The chaos of the hospital disappeared. For a moment, so did everything else. From then on, she danced in secret. In the living room, when the house was quiet. In grocery store. Aisles when the music overhead changed. In the back row of the school auditorium while nobody was looking. She mimicked what she saw on borrowed phones and grainy library computers. She couldn't pronounce the terms. Didn't know the history. But her body remembered. Her body always remembered. Amia was 11 now, and she lived in a part of Eastbrook, Ohio, where dreams like hers stayed small and quiet. The ballet studios in town were places with polished wood floors and French names and girls who carried their water bottles in monogrammed bags. The one everyone talked about, Crescendo School of Dance, looked like a place pulled out of a magazine, all glass and grace and quiet money. No one from her neighborhood had ever set foot in there. It wasn't forbidden exactly, just unspoken. Her mother, Denise, worked 2 jobs, days at the hospital and nights cleaning offices. She loved her daughter fiercely, but she didn't always know what to do with the weight of Amia's silence. Amia wasn't loud like other kids. She didn't beg or demand. She simply wrote things down. On the back of grocery lists, in the corners of her school notebooks, she drew point shoes and stage lights and swirls of motion. Denise found a few of those papers once, tucked into Amia's pillowcase. She sat with them at the kitchen table for almost an hour, her shift badge still clipped to her collar. Then she placed them gently back where she found them. Amia didn't talk about ballet at school, not because she wasn't proud of it, but because she knew what it would bring: questions, teasing, the sideways glance that said, "What makes you think that's for you?" So she stayed quiet. She danced at home. She watched pirouettes in the glow of her cracked tablet while the world slept. One day during music class, the teacher played a video clip of the Nutcracker. Amia leaned forward before she could stop. Herself. She knew the sequence. She'd practiced it 100 times. Her fingers moved instinctively with the music, tracing the air. The boy next to her laughed. "You trying to be a ballerina or something?" Amia pulled her hands back quickly. Her cheeks burned. "No," she said, too fast. But the teacher had noticed. After class, Ms. Carter approached her gently. "You like ballet?" Amia hesitated. Then she nodded. "You ever think about auditioning for the arts program?" Amia didn't know what to say. The school's public arts program had a reputation for being underfunded and underwhelming, but it was better than nothing. Still, it wasn't Crescendo, and she knew it. Everyone did, I guess, she said quietly. Ms. Carter smiled. "You should. You've got grace." Amia thought about that all night. Not the suggestion, but the word. Grace. No one had ever said that about her before. Smart, sure, quiet, yes. But grace? That belonged to the girls in white tutus, not the black girl with hand-me-down sneakers and stretch pants. Still, the seed had been planted. The next weekend, Amia asked her mom if she could borrow the library's computer. She printed an application for the Crescendo School of Dance trial audition program. Her hands trembled slightly as she filled it out. In the space for dance education background, she wrote, "Self-taught, no formal training," then added in small handwriting, "But I love to learn." Her mother found the form later that night. "You know this place is expensive, right?" Denise asked, voice soft, not dismissive. "It's just a trial audition," Amia replied. "It's free. They only pick 5 kids from public schools." Denise stared at the form. "You sure you want to try?" Mia looked her mother in the eye for the first time that day. "I just want a chance." That Monday, she submitted the form. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived at the house with the Crescendo logo pressed into thick ivory paper. She'd been accepted for the audition. Amia didn't scream or cry. She didn't know how to celebrate that kind of news. She simply held the paper close to her chest and whispered, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Her school counselor, Mrs. Briggs, called her in that afternoon. "I heard you're auditioning at Crescendo." "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Briggs folded her hands. "They're very particular. I just want you to be prepared." Amia swallowed hard. "I am." The counselor paused. "I'm not saying you shouldn't go. Just don't be disappointed if they don't see what you see." Amia nodded again. "I just want to try." That night she pulled her old binder from under the bed, the one she had stopped using. She cleaned off the dust and began writing again. Stretches, routines, dreams. She cut out pictures from library magazines and glued them in page by page, building a world that didn't yet exist around her but might, if she could just make it through the door. Her mother watched from the hallway and said nothing. The day of the audition came fast. Too fast. Denise had borrowed a neighbor's car and ironed Amia's only white leotard. The slippers were second-hand, bought from a thrift shop downtown. They pinched her toes, but she didn't complain. They drove in silence. As the Crescendo building came into view, Amia pressed her forehead to the window. The structure was all glass and elegance, framed with flowering trees and iron sculptures. She could see girls inside already warming up, hair in buns, matching uniforms, movements. Practiced and polished, Denise parked the car but didn't move. "You nervous?" Amia nodded. Her mother reached over and took her hand. "Remember, baby, the world don't always give people like us a fair shot, but that don't mean we don't take it." Amia looked down at her shoes, then up at the building. The air felt too thin, the entrance too wide. She stepped out anyway. The front desk woman glanced at her paperwork and barely smiled. Room B4, downstairs. The stairs creaked beneath her feet. The hallway smelled like eucalyptus and silence. Other girls had already arrived, chatting, stretching, laughing like they'd done this 100 times. Amia took a quiet corner and began her stretches. She didn't look around. She focused on her breathing, her posture, her lines. When the EO instructor walked in, everyone stood. Ms. Calder looked like she had been pulled out of a storybook. Perfect bun, long neck, cold eyes. She glanced around the room. When her gaze landed on Amia, it paused, just slightly, and then moved on. Amia felt it. The message, the hesitation, the unspoken sentence. "What are you doing here?" But she didn't move. She had made it this far. She would not disappear now. The studio smelled of eucalyptus and polish, its walls echoing soft piano notes as if the building itself whispered in rhythm. Amia stepped inside like a shadow, silent, unnoticed. Her second-hand ballet slippers clung tightly to her feet, their edges curled from wear. She clutched her bag against her side, trying not to meet anyone's eyes. The girls around her laughed easily. Their leotards matched. Their hair was styled into smooth buns with shiny barrettes that caught the light. They had names like Paige, and Madeline and Harper. And they had parents, waiting outside with coffee cups and encouragement. Amia had her mother's words in her head. "You're allowed to take up space. Don't forget that." Still, she folded herself smaller as she found an open spot near the wall. She bent to stretch, hiding her nerves behind long, practiced inhales. But her eyes kept drifting toward the mirrors. In them, she saw difference, not in ability. She hadn't danced yet, but in presence. The other girls looked like they belonged to this world, like they'd been born into it. She looked like she'd wandered in by accident. The room quieted when Ms. Calder entered. She glided across the floor with a graceful authority that silenced even the chatterboxes. Her expression was unreadable, but Amia noticed how her gaze slid past her without pausing. "Line up," Ms. Calder said briskly. The first few exercises were structured, pliés, relevés, tendus. Amia followed with precision. Her form wasn't perfect, but it was careful, full of hunger. Every movement said, "I know I wasn't trained here, but I'm here anyway." When they moved on to jumps, Amia gave everything she had, her toes pointed, Hard. Her knees bent deep. She landed softly. There was a small stumble, just once, but she recovered fast. A few girls near her exchanged smirks. One leaned toward another and whispered, "Too much leg. Looks weird." Amia heard it. She didn't flinch, but the words pressed against her ribs like stones. Still, she pushed forward. Then came the freestyle portion, 60 seconds to show what they loved most. Amia had planned this, rehearsed it at night. Her sequence was simple, expressive, layered with emotion. She wasn't trying to dazzle, she was trying to speak. When her name was called, she stepped forward and looked straight ahead. The music started. A soft piano loop. She moved into it slowly, an arm raised like it was reaching. Then a pivot, then a spin that brought her center. She let herself feel it. She imagined she was home, dancing in the living room with the curtains closed, where the music was louder than the doubts. She landed her final step, chest rising, gaze forward. Silence. Ms. Calder scribbled something without looking up. The next girl was called. Amia returned to her spot. She folded her hands, waited. At the end, Ms. Calder addressed the group. "We'll notify accepted candidates by mail," she said. Dismissed. That was it. No feedback, no questions, no encouragement, just stillness. Amia grabbed her bag, her fingers trembling. She walked past the door, but paused near the hall as two instructors whispered just outside. One of them chuckled softly. "That girl, what was her name, Jefferson?" "Yeah," Calder replied. "Poor thing, they try, but black kids don't really do ballet. It's just not our tradition. They're built different, strong, sure, but not soft, not lyrical." "Shame," the other woman added. Amia stood frozen, her stomach hollowed. She turned and left before they saw her. Outside, the sun had started to dip. Her mother was waiting in the car. Amia didn't speak when she got in. Her mother didn't ask. They drove in silence. The rejection letter came 4 days later. It was thin, cold, the paper stiff like it had been handled too many times before it even reached her hands. The logo at the top read, "Crescendo School of Dance," printed in delicate serif letters embossed as if to elevate its authority. But the message was short. "We regret to inform you." Amia didn't read the rest. She didn't need to. She handed the letter to her mother and walked to her room without a word. Denise read the entire thing, her lips pressed tightly together. There was no explanation, no feedback, no mention of talent, effort, or promise. Just rejection, sanitized and standardized. A decision, but not a reflection. She tapped on Amia's door that evening. No answer. When she opened it, Amia was sitting on the edge of her bed, her feet bare, her ballet slippers sitting untouched on the floor like wilted flowers. "You okay?" Denise asked softly. Amia didn't look up. I knew they wouldn't. "Pick me." "Don't say that. It's true." Her voice was quiet, too even, like she'd rehearsed that sentence the same way she rehearsed routines. "They didn't even see me," she added. They looked, but they didn't see. Her mother sat beside her, close but not touching. "You don't need their eyes to tell you who you are." Amia didn't respond. That night, she tucked the slippers back into the bottom drawer and shut it hard. At school, the buzz around the Crescendo auditions hadn't died yet. One of the girls, a student named Kaylin, walked through the hallway like she was already en route to Broadway. She flashed her acceptance email to anyone who glanced her way. She even printed it out, taped it to her locker. When Amia passed, by Kaylin said, "Didn't see you at callbacks. Guess they didn't think you were ready." The other girls laughed. Amia kept walking. Later that afternoon, her homeroom teacher, Mr. Redford, leaned down at her desk as she worked through a math worksheet. "Hey, I heard you auditioned," he said, his voice low, like he was doing her a favor by being discreet. Amia nodded. "Don't be discouraged," he continued. "You've got rhythm. Maybe ballet's not your lane, maybe something more expressive like hip-hop or step." Amia stared at her worksheet. He smiled awkwardly. "Just saying, might be more your style. More your style." The words echoed in her head longer than she wanted them to. By the end of the week, she'd stopped raising her hand in class. She avoided mirrors. When music played over the intercom, she no longer tapped her fingers or swayed. Her shoulders. She'd taken all her drawings from her binder, sketches of stage lights and point shoes, and ripped them up in the bathroom during recess. She threw the binder in the trash can outside the school gate. No one saw her do it. No one stopped her. Amia stopped dancing, not with a dramatic announcement, not in protest, just quietly. A slow shutting down, like a song that fades out instead of ending. She no longer walked on her toes in the hallway, no longer stretched her arms while brushing her teeth. Her body, once alive with motion, now moved, mechanically, like it was too heavy to lift fully. Her mother noticed. Denise had always kept a respectful distance from Amia's world of dance. She didn't pretend to understand the technique or the dreams, but she knew what joy looked like when it lived in her daughter. And now that joy had been drained away, replaced with silence and empty afternoons. One Saturday morning, Denise knocked gently on Amia's door and entered with a small tray of food. Amia was sitting on the floor beside her bed, organizing pencils that no longer drew ballet sketches. "I made French toast," her mother said. "I'm not hungry." Denise sat the tray down anyway. "You want to talk about it?" Amia shrugged. "I just don't get it," she finally said, her voice brittle. "I danced better than half of them. I tried. I worked so hard, but they didn't care. They didn't even try to see me." Her mother exhaled slowly. "I know what that feels like." Amia looked up. "I've worked twice as hard for half the credit," Denise continued. "When I started nursing, I trained people who later became my supervisors. They'd smile to my face and then pretend they didn't hear me speak in meetings." "But how do you keep going?" Amia asked. "How do you not just stop?" Her mother gave a soft smile. "I think about you, about the kind of world I want you to grow up in, and sometimes I dance in my own way, just by staying in the room." Amia didn't reply. But her eyes filled. That evening, while folding laundry, Denise found a crumpled paper at the bottom of the hamper. It was a drawing, a half-finished sketch of a girl on stage, arms raised, light falling across her face. The lines were shaky. There was an X drawn over the whole thing. She smoothed it out, placed it carefully in a folder, and set it on Amia's desk without saying a word. That night, Amia sat at her window, legs pulled to her chest. She watched the wind move through the trees, watched the street lamps flicker, and for the first time in weeks, she let the music play again. She didn't dance. Not yet. But her fingers tapped softly on the windowsill, just enough to remember that, somewhere inside her, the rhythm hadn't died. Winter came early that year, pressing cold winds through the gaps in Eastbrook's windows and hearts. And somewhere in that chill, Amia Jefferson faded into quiet. 3 months had passed since the rejection, since Crescendo, since her dream had been bent in silence, then snapped in two by people who never cared to know her name. At school, the laughter that once circled her after performances was gone. Now it lingered around her like a cruel echo of what could have been. One student whispered in the hallway, she thought she was going to be Misty Copeland or something, and another cackled behind their locker door. She heard it all. She just didn't respond. Her movement slowed, her spark dimmed. She no longer raised her hand in class, no longer sat near the front. She stopped doing her hair with bows and twists. Instead, she wore it back in a tight bun, not the kind made for performance, but the kind meant for invisibility. Lunchtime became her loneliest hour. The table she once shared with classmates now belonged to others. She started taking her tray to the far corner, facing the window. Some days, she didn't even eat, just picked at her food and counted clouds. Her grades dropped, not in a dramatic spiral, but enough for the teachers to raise their eyebrows. "She's distracted," one said during a parent-teacher conference. "She's withdrawn," said another. Denise listened, arms crossed, nodding without speaking. She already knew. At home, Amia barely spoke. She went straight to her room after school, homework forgotten, chores ignored. Denise would knock, enter, and try to make conversation. How was school? Fine. You hungry? No. You want to talk? A shrug, a shake of the head, a sigh. Denise would leave the door cracked open, hoping that maybe one day Amia would reach back. She didn't. One evening, Denise tried again. This time, she brought an old photo album. It was filled with pictures of Amia as a little girl, twirling in socks on the linoleum floor, dancing at church picnics, smiling with arms extended like wings. Remember this? She asked, holding up a photo of Amia, age 6, spinning in the hallway of the hospital while Denise charted paperwork nearby. You used to make the nurses stop in their tracks. Amia barely glanced at it. I was a kid. You still are. No. I was stupid. Denise's breath caught. What do you mean? I thought if I worked hard enough I could be something, but I'm not who they want. I don't belong there. Her mother set the album down slowly. Maybe not there, but somewhere. Amia shook her head. No, nowhere. That word hit Denise like a punch. Nowhere. It wasn't just about dance anymore. Amia's sense of self, her identity, had folded in on itself. She hadn't just been denied an opportunity. She had been made to question if she ever deserved one to begin with. At night, she still watched ballet videos sometimes. But she didn't move. Her fingers curled into fists under the blanket. Her legs stayed still. Her body remembered the choreography. But her spirit had forgotten why it mattered. The mornings grew harder. Amia began waking up later, missing the first bell more than once. Her mother's voice grew sharper, more tired. It wasn't anger. It was fear disguised as frustration. Denise was watching her daughter slip through her fingers, and she didn't know how to catch her without breaking what was left. One afternoon, Amia came home to find a small package on her bed. No name, no note. Just a black box wrapped in tissue, paper. She opened it slowly and found a pair of new ballet slippers. They were soft, pale pink, untouched. She stared at them for a long time. Then pushed the box back under the bed. She couldn't. Not anymore. At school, she stopped signing up for performances. She skipped music club, excused herself from assemblies. When the annual winter showcase came around, a time she usually volunteered, to choreograph something, she didn't even take the permission slip home. Her teachers tried to coax her back. You always loved this time of year, Ms. Carter said gently. You were made for the stage, Amia shrugged. Not anymore. Even her clothes had changed. Darker tones, baggier fits. Less color, less her. It was like she was camouflaging herself in a world that had told her she didn't belong in light. Sometimes, in the middle of math class or during lunch, her mind would drift, just for a second, to the hospital hallway when she was 6. The floors were polished and full of footsteps, and there she had danced, right in the middle of it all, unafraid. She missed that version of herself, the fearless one, the one who didn't know how to shrink. But every time she tried to reach back for that memory, a different voice interrupted. Black kids don't really do ballet, built different. Not your tradition, more your style. Words that weren't even hers had rooted themselves deep inside her skin. One night, her mother tried a different approach. They sat together on the couch watching the news. A segment came on about a rising black ballerina who had just joined the American Conservatory. Her name was flashing on the screen. Her brown skin glowed beneath stage lights. She smiled like she'd earned it. Denise turned to Amia. See that? She's doing it. That could be you. Amia looked away. It's not the same. Why not? She probably went to fancy schools, had coaches, got picked. Denise exhaled. You're still allowed to want something, even if it's not handed to you. Amia didn't respond. She stood and walked to her room, closing the door behind her. In the dark, she sat on the floor beside the forgotten box. She opened it again, touched the slippers, held one in her hand, then set it down gently, still not ready. Not yet. Rain fell harder that weekend. The kind of steady gray rain that made everything feel still and forgotten. Amia spent most of Saturday curled beneath her blankets. She stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks, the shadows, the seconds between the raindrops tapping the window pane. The music she used to love played low from her tablet on the dresser, but she didn't move. Not a finger, not a toe. Just listened. Let the sound pass through her like wind through leaves. Sunday morning came with a weight she couldn't shake. Her mother stood in the doorway, holding a bag of laundry and looking as tired as Amia felt. "You coming out today?" Denise asked. Amia shook her head. "I was thinking we could walk. Maybe to the bakery. Get your favorite muffins." Another. Sheikh Denise lingered. "You can't live in that room, Amia, not forever." Her daughter didn't look at her. "You're more than this moment," Denise added softly. "You just forgot." After she left, Amia sat in the silence again, but something about those words stayed. She reached for her tablet, clicked play on an old ballet video, one she hadn't watched since before the audition. A dancer moved across the screen, graceful, confident, glowing. Every step was polished, but it was the emotion that mattered. The way her hands told a story her mouth didn't have to. Amia watched it twice. Then again, she remembered the hospital hallway, the way strangers used to smile when she twirled, the way her mom clapped, even when no one else did. How light she used to feel. A quiet voice in her head whispered, "What if you didn't give up?" That evening, Amia got out of bed. She brushed her hair, pulled it into a bun. Not perfect, but hers. She slid on leggings and a t-shirt, walked to her closet and opened the drawer. The pink slippers were still there, tucked between two forgotten books. She took them out, sat on the floor, held them like they were alive. Then slowly, almost shyly, she slipped them on. She stood, no music, no choreography, just her. She closed her eyes, let her arms rise, let her feet remember, and for the first time in months, she danced, not for crescendo, not for approval, not for anyone else, just for herself. Saturday mornings used to mean quiet. They used to be the one time Amia could pretend the world wasn't watching. But this Saturday felt different. There was movement in the house. Voices from the hallway, a cousin's laugh, the shuffle of bags near the front door. Denise peeked into Amia's room. "Wake up," she said, tapping lightly on the door. "Nyla's here." Amia opened one. "Why?" "She wants to take you somewhere." Amia sat up slowly. "I don't feel like going out." Denise folded her arms. "You've been not feeling like it for 3 months. It's just a class, local. No judges, no auditions, no pressure." Amia groaned. "I'm not doing this again." Her mother didn't move. "It's at the rec center." Amia's head turned. That place. The one they used to go to for summer. Camp, basketball, story hour, no leotards, no ballet. "You said it's a dance class?" she asked. Denise nodded. "Just go. One time." Reluctantly, Amia pulled on leggings and a sweatshirt. She didn't pack her slippers. When they arrived, the gym was already buzzing. Laughter spilled from the open doors. Inside, the floor was worn but familiar. Folding chairs lined one wall. A speaker played soft instrumentals, jazz mixed with classical. In the center stood a woman with salt-streaked curls, broad shoulders, and bare feet. She moved with a calm power, like she owned every step and didn't need to prove it. That was Ms. Leanne Reyes. "All right, let's warm up," she said, clapping her hands. "No fancy stuff, just stretch and breathe." Amia stayed by the wall. Nyla nudged her. "Come on, at least try. I'll watch." Ms. Reyes noticed her almost immediately. She didn't say anything, just nodded and returned to the group. Halfway through the class, Reyes demonstrated, a fluid spin, her arms slicing the air. She stopped suddenly, turned toward the wall, and called out without raising her voice. "Want to show me what you got, wallflower?" Amia's eyes widened. "I'm good," Ms. Reyes smiled. "You think you're hiding, but rhythm doesn't disappear, it just waits." The room laughed gently. Not at her, but around her. Soft, inviting. Amia walked forward, not because she was ready, but because something about the way Reyes looked at her said, "I see you, and you're safe here." She stood beside the group and copied the moves. Hesitant, at first, then more sure. Reyes walked over and gently corrected her arms. Not everything has to be sharp, you're allowed to soften. After class, Amia lingered by the door. Reyes handed her a small flyer. Next week, same time. Amia took it. I'm not sure if I'll be back. You will, Reyes said, already turning away. Dancers don't disappear. They pause. But the rhythm stays. That night, Amia didn't sit by the window. She cleared her floor, rolled up the rug, and danced, quietly to herself. The next Saturday she returned, then the next, and then 5 more. Every week brought something new to the center. Ms. Reyes didn't teach like the crescendo instructors. She didn't lecture about posture or perfection. She told stories. Between pliés and stretches, she shared pieces of herself. You know Raven Wilkinson? She asked one Saturday, balancing on one foot. Danced in the 50s, had to wear makeup, to look white just to perform. Think about that. The girls gasped. Amia felt a flicker inside her. She toured with a white company and had to leave the South because of threats. But she kept going. You see, the floor didn't reject her. The world did. But she danced anyway. On another day, Reyes introduced them to the story of Misty Copeland. People told her she was too old, too curvy, too black. She said, "Watch me." And now she's a principal ballerina. Every time she told a story, Amia's spine straightened a little more. Reyes saw it. After one class, she pulled Amia aside. You've got something, not just talent, heart, the kind that can move rooms. Amia looked down. I missed my chance already. Reyes tilted her head. Or maybe you were preparing for the one that matters. She handed Amia a folded flyer. On it, National Youth Ballet Federation, Rising Hope Scholarship auditions, 6 weeks away. It's real? Mia asked. Very. All expenses covered. They choose based on potential, not pedigree. Amia held the paper like it might disappear. I don't know if I'm ready. You don't have to be ready, Reyes said. You have to be willing. That night, Amia didn't wait until dark. She cleared her room, stood in front of the mirror, and practiced. Her arms were stiff at first, her legs unsure. But something had shifted. She danced for herself. Not to win, not to prove, but to speak. The next week, Reyes paired her with a volunteer coach, a high school senior who had won the same competition 2 years before. Her name was Tiana, and she was bold, precise, and relentless. You've got grace, Tiana said, but you hold back. Amia nodded. I'm scared to mess up. Then mess up. Big, loud. You can't grow if you're always trying to disappear. They trained twice a week. Tiana helped refine her technique. Reyes guided her soul, and for the first time, Amia felt whole again. Not perfect, not crescendo approved, but whole. The days blurred together in a rhythm of breath, sweat, and silent determination. After school, Amia no longer drifted into stillness. She moved, stretched, reviewed each combination Tiana gave her. She filled the margins of her notebooks with new choreography instead of old wounds. Her mother noticed. Late one evening, Denise stood in the doorway and watched as Amia turned slowly in the center of her room. Not flawless, but powerful. Her lines were sharper now, her body stronger, and her spirit no longer fragile. You've been practicing, Denise said. Amia turned, startled, then smiled. Yeah. Her mother stepped in slowly. You look free. Amia nodded. I feel like me again. Denise walked closer, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. I'm proud of you. Amia's eyes softened. Thanks for not giving up on me. Denise smiled. That was never an option. As the scholarship deadline neared, tension crept in. Some days, Amia nailed every step. Other days, she stumbled and doubted. One afternoon, she broke down during rehearsal, tears streaking her cheeks after a missed landing. I can't do this, she whispered. What if they say I'm still not enough? Reyes sat beside her on the floor. Do you know what I see when I watch you dance? Amia shook her head. I see a girl who refused to stay broken. I see strength in your fingers, in your silence, in every step that says I'm still here. Amia looked away. You're not dancing for them, Reyes added. You're dancing for every part of yourself that once believed she couldn't. The next morning, Amia stood in front of the mirror again. She tied her hair up neatly, slipped on her now well-worn slippers, stared at her reflection, not to fix it, but to face it. She whispered to herself, "This time I'm not dancing to fit in. I'm dancing because I belong." As the audition date circled closer, she grew steadier, more deliberate. Her movements were not perfect, but they were honest, and that was enough. The train ride to Chicago was long, but Amia didn't mind. She watched the city grow outside the window, her earbuds playing a soft score she'd choreographed her piece to a dozen times. The train hummed beneath her feet, a steady rhythm that calmed the nerves bouncing inside her chest. Next to her, Denise held her hand tightly. No words, just presence. Support wrapped in silence. When they arrived at the venue, the air was sharp and cold, and the building stretched tall like a monument to possibility. Banners flapped outside, Rising Hope National Ballet Competition. Inside, everything gleamed, floors buffed to mirrors, walls lined with dancers in satin and stretch. Amia held her duffel tighter. Her thrifted warm-up gear felt even more worn against the luxury around her. In the waiting lounge, she saw them. 2 girls from Crescendo. Same faces, same smirks. One leaned over and whispered just loud enough, "Didn't think she'd actually show up." The other replied, "Guess the rec center teaches confidence," they laughed. Mia looked away, heart thudding. She focused on her breath. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. The way Reyes had taught her, the way she steadied her core before every turn. This time she wasn't dancing to win them over. She was dancing to speak. Behind the stage curtain, her number was called. 104. She stood, legs trembling but spine straight. The backstage official handed her a clip-on mic for the introduction. "If you'd like to say a few words about your piece, you can." Amia took it, then paused. She thought about explaining the meaning, the struggle, the journey, but instead she handed it back with a soft "no thanks." The curtain opened, the light hit her face, and the world went silent. For a second, Amia froze, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the moment. The audience stretched before her, rows of elegant people with poised hands and watchful eyes. The judging panel sat centered beneath soft spotlight. 4 names, 4 chairs, and among them Ms. Calder, her expression unreadable, but her presence unmistakable. Amia swallowed the lump rising in her throat. Then she stepped into the center of the stage. The music began. It was slow, almost haunting, a cello that moaned like memory. Her arms rose, not with practiced flair, but with the aching grace of someone lifting herself out of silence. She moved through the first sequence gently, her feet whispering across the floor, her body gliding like the ghost of every girl who had ever been told she didn't belong here. Then came the pivot, a turn, smooth, quick, grounded in breath. Her rhythm sharpened, her fingers sliced, her chest opened with strength. It wasn't Crescendo's kind of performance, clean, showy, cold. It was something else, a story, one about resistance, about choosing to dance in the space where the world once told you to disappear. She didn't chase perfection, she chased presence. Every time her foot hit the floor, it said, "I'm still here." The room grew stiller with each beat, even the crescendo. Girls sat quiet now, the smirks gone. As the final note approached, Amia lifted into a jump, not the highest, not the most technical, but it hung in the air like defiance. When she landed, the music faded. Silence. Then, one judge stood. Another followed, then the third, the fourth. Applause erupted like thunder breaking a long-held breath. Amia's heart raced, but she didn't cry. She bowed, shoulders soft, spine proud. Backstage, she tried to catch her breath. Tiana met her with a hug so tight it almost knocked her off balance. Denise, tearful but beaming, mouthed, "That was yours." Then Ms. Calder approached. Her heels clicked softly on the tile. "You've come a long way," she said, voice neutral. Amia met her gaze without flinching. "I've always been this far," she replied. You just didn't see it. Calder nodded slightly, lips tight. Amia turned and walked away, not in anger but in power. Later that afternoon, the awards ceremony took place in the grand ballroom. Velvet chairs filled the space. Golden lighting bathed the room in a glow that made the moment feel almost unreal. One by one, names were called. Scholarships announced. Ribbons handed out. But then came the final award, the Rising Hope. The announcer paused. This year's Rising Hope Award goes to a dancer whose performance moved every single judge. A dancer who told a story that didn't just entertain, but transformed. The award, along with a full scholarship to the American Conservatory of Ballet, goes to Amia Jefferson. The room erupted. Amia's legs barely moved. Tiana nudged, her forward, laughing and crying at once. Denise stood, clapping with both hands pressed hard together, as if to say, "This is everything we prayed for." Amia walked to the stage. Flashes from cameras, shouts of congratulations, but all she could hear was the quiet inside her, the place that used to hold shame, now filling with peace. She held the certificate close to her chest and stepped down from the stage into her mother's arms. "You did it," Denise whispered. "No," Amia said, her voice steady. "We did." On the flight home, Amia sat by the window watching the clouds roll beneath them. Tiana leaned over. "You ready for New York?" Amia smiled. "I was born ready. I just had to remember." And when they landed, Amia didn't feel like a guest in someone else's world anymore. She felt like she belonged, not because someone let her in, but because she broke the door open and danced right through it. 6 years had passed, but Amia remembered everything. She remembered the whispers at Crescendo, the weight of rejection, the silence of her own bedroom. And the first Saturday she walked into Ms. Reyes's studio with her heart stitched together by music. Now, at 17, she stood center stage, Odette in Swan Lake, the first black ballerina to ever perform the role in the region. The lights rose. The curtain drew back, and Amia, crowned in white feathers and strength, began to move. Every turn spoke of resilience. Every leap cut through history like a ribbon finally unraveling. The audience watched in stunned silence, witnessing not just a performance, but a story, a reclamation. In the front row, Denise sat with her hands clutched tightly in her lap. Her eyes brimmed with tears that never fell. They stayed suspended in pride. She had watched her daughter rise, not overnight, but piece by piece, step by step, toe by blistered toe. Beside her sat Ms. Reyes, a quiet smile on her face. She wasn't clapping yet. She was listening to the rhythm, to the legacy, to the truth that now danced under the lights. Backstage, just before curtain call, Amia had handed off a binder to a younger girl, a quiet one with big eyes and nervous fingers. "It's yours now," Amia had said, pressing the binder into her palms. The girl opened it and gasped. It was filled with pages of choreography, notes, affirmations, quotes from Copeland and Wilkinson and Reyes herself, all handwritten in different colors, all traced in the ink of belief. "Why me?" the girl had whispered. "Because I see you," Amia replied. "Like someone once saw me." After the final bow, after the standing ovation, after the roses, Amia walked backstage and sat on the edge of the bench, removing her point shoes slowly. Her toes ached, but her soul felt free. A small knock came from the door frame. A girl, no, older than 10, peeked inside, her curls bouncing around her face. "You were amazing," she said shyly. Amia smiled. "Thank you." The girl stepped forward. "Do you think I could ever dance like that?" Amia looked into her eyes, not to measure potential but to reflect it. "You already do," she said. "You just haven't been given the stage yet." The girl beamed at Amia's words, her cheeks glowing with hope. She clutched the strap of her backpack and said, "I want to start tomorrow." Amia smiled. "Then I'll see you tomorrow." After the girl skipped out, Amia sat in silence, letting the moment settle around her like silk. The theater was mostly empty now. the energy lingering in the air like a scent that refused to fade. She looked down at the shoes in her hands, worn, stitched, cracked at the tips, a history etched into satin. She didn't feel like she'd reached a finish. It was something better, a continuation, a bridge. Outside the dressing room, Denise waited. When Amia stepped into the hallway, her mother pulled her into an embrace so tight it took the air out of her lungs. "I saw you," Denise whispered, eyes glassy. "I saw everything you've become." Amia rested her head against her mother's shoulder. "Because of you." "No, baby," Denise said, holding her at arm's length. "Because of you." Later that week, Amia returned to the local rec center, the one where it had all restarted. The gym smelled the same, like floor polish, echoes, and dreams. But now Amia stood at the front of the room. 12 little girls sat cross-legged before her, each one different, each one waiting. Not one of them had perfect form. Not one of them cared. They were there to move, to feel, to belong. Amia pulled out her binder and opened to the first page. A quote from Reyes was scrawled across the top. "The world won't always open the door. But that doesn't mean you wait. Sometimes you dance through it." Amia looked at the group. "Today," she said, "we start by believing that this space belongs to you." Small hands rose to the sky. Feet stretched, dreams stirred, and Amia, now both dancer and guide, stepped into a role far greater than any solo. She wasn't just performing anymore. She was making room,